Alrighty. Okay, well, it's good to meet everyone. The focus of today is bringing crypto to the people, not people to crypto. Obviously, where crypto is from a price today, everybody wants to talk about crypto. This is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to be talking about real-world use cases. So maybe a little bit off the trend right now. So one of the things I hear a lot is blockchain is good, crypto is bad, or some permutation of that. We think that's a false dichotomy. And the reason for that is because if you're bullish on tokenization on a public blockchain, the way that these blockchains work is that you need crypto to pay for the transactions. You need that in order to pay for the gas fees, for example, if you're using Ethereum. What we also hear is stablecoins. Stablecoins are different to crypto, and that's certainly the case. But again, to pay for the network fees, that uses crypto. And so we try to challenge this concept that if you're bullish on these two pieces, you should also be bullish on crypto as an underlying technology and infrastructure to move transfer of value. So at Zero Hash, we talk a lot about the 2.0 value engine. And so there's stables, there's crypto, and there's fiat. And what we really think is important is bridging these three pillars into a unified engine that people can leverage in different ways. No one piece of this engine solves all of the world's problems. And so we're really bullish in terms of connecting these different pieces. So for example, if you're transferring value cross-border with stables, you also need to pay for gas fees. So that means you also need to leverage crypto. If you want to, for example, receive payment, if you're a contractor, for example, at Upwork, you'll be paid in fiat, but you may want to receive, for example, USDC on the other side. Or, for example, we pay some of our contractors in Brazil in Bitcoin. And so we think what's really, really important is how these three pieces link together, but also how they may intersect as well. So, for example, stables, there's multi-chain now. So I think there's 8 different chains on which USDC is built on. One person may send in USDC on a certain chain, and another entity may want to receive it on another chain. That bridge is really, really important. And so if you think of these as concentric circles, linking these pieces together we think are really, really important. So I know that the market might be telling us to focus on crypto, and we certainly do service a lot of investment platforms. But what we really want to talk about today is stables. So we put this up here. Stablecoin adoption is already here. This is maybe easier for you guys to read, but you can see here that the transaction volume, on-chain transaction volume of stablecoins has grown, and I put here the sources and how that links back to PayPal, Visa, ACH, and Fedwire. And to us, this is still very, very early innings. So you can see here there's a huge amount of adoption in a very short period of time, but there's so much more that can come from this in a very quick period of time. The value prop, which I'll try and illustrate through very tangible examples. Somebody asked me today, too long, don't read, I don't want to come to your thing. I said, okay, I'll give you the short, too long, don't read. We are trying to be pragmatic optimists. So we're going to walk through these pieces. But the key value prop is faster and cheaper payments. That matters for certain use cases. A network of networks globally. So for example, if there's been a lot of talk about RTP, but if you want to move transfer of value from, for example, the US to Brazil, and you want to pay out somebody in Brazil on PIX, and you pour a payment in RTP in the US, how do you move between these two countries? And that's where we think stables in particular can be this network of networks cross-border. Really, really important is 24/7, 365 movement of value. And this is particularly important in certain use cases, such as the movement of collateral, we think is really, really important. Especially in an interest rate environment that we have today, not being able to move money quickly creates an opportunity to actually earn the interest on those assets. And something that we're particularly excited about, which we're in very early stages, but often today, and this is something that we're trying to change, stables often equate to USDC, or it equates to USDT. By stables, we also mean, for example, tokenized money market funds. And if you look, we're still in an early inception of money market tokenized funds. Franklin Templeton, for example, has announced Benji. There's less than $1 billion of tokenized money market funds, but we think that's going to be a really interesting transfer of value. If you're, for example, an entity that has to move collateral, it really does reduce the cost of capital in moving yield-bearing instruments in a tokenized fashion. So we want to flip the script. We want to focus on bringing real-world use cases, and effectively, in some of these use cases, the person leveraging this technology may not actually know that they're leveraging this technology. And so I'll go through quickly 4 different use cases that we're particularly bullish about and that we have customers in. So one is global payroll, the other is remittances and payouts, the third is brokerages and institutional, and the fourth is payments. This is not meant to be the entire world of stablecoin application. This is meant to give some indication of why we think stablecoins have real-world utility. So global payroll. When we mean global payroll, we mean, for example, companies now are becoming increasingly global. If you look at our company, we were 100% US-based 3 years ago. We are now 50% US-based today. And so we have people across the world that we need to pay, and that have different demands and requirements than somebody based here in the United States. And so if you look at our value engine, the key point here is settlement in fiat, which can either be through a virtual account, for example, or from a batch payment. So for example, if you were a customer of Deal or many of these other providers, we could receive a batch payment, and then we can pay out stable coins to the end user. That end user can then leverage that USDC and either hold USDC as a store of value, or they may use a local off-ramping mechanism. So a great example of this is, for example, in Mexico, one of the largest exchanges there, Bitso, can receive USDC and then convert it actually into Mexican peso for you. And this is very, very quick, very, very cheap. And also, if customers want to hold USDC, it's also a hedge against local currency devaluation. Some data points here. So this is actually Deal's data point on the 4%. 4% of Deal's payouts today is done through crypto, and it's actually a pretty clunky experience. And that's pretty incredible. Also, I attach here some unreleased data that we've collected that we'll be releasing at the end of this year, at the end of this month, from Sentiment, with 2,500 freelancers across a range of different countries. You can see here the demand. Also, talking from experience, we have, for example, a high number of people in Brazil and Argentina. And I know the stats from our own. It's roughly the same as this. Remittances and payouts. So I gave the example of RTP in the US and then payout in PIX. This is a data point today from several different providers that 5% of the corridor between the US and Mexico is already done by leveraging crypto. That may be intentional. So for example, if you look at the remittance corridors, a lot of it's done in cash. So there may be groups like Coinstar, where you can go today, you can put cash in, you get crypto, and then you can redeem that in Mexico through a partner. But if you look at these numbers, and actually if you look at the number of steps that are needed to do this, that really to us really demonstrates a huge value prop given the friction to actually do this today. Brokerage and institutional. Our business really did start with brokerage and institutional in 2017. We now have customers like Interactive Brokers, Tasty Trade, and others. And what we think is really, really interesting here is not only the ability for network of networks. If you're somebody based in Brazil or even in Europe and you're using a brokerage here in the US, the time to fund your account is incredibly slow. But also the transaction fee is also really, really high. And so stablecoins can be used as a mechanism for this transfer of value. So effectively the flow is you fund your zero hash account in USDC, again, or this is all through API, and so you can do it through the brokerage native experience. We then sweep that USDC into USD, and we can fund your brokerage account within minutes and for a fraction of the cost. What we think is also really, really interesting here is the movement towards T+1 settlement in the equities world. T+1 settlement is going to cause issues given the velocity and movement of money. Boney, for example, in 2024, just a month ago, said that a third of all trades, people do not know how these are going to settle. And so the way to move money, if you move money on Swift, for example, we're talking to customers, if they're based in, for example, South Korea, they have to go through 4 or 5 different Swift hops. USDC is one Swift hop. Well, there's no Swift hop, and effectively, it's a real-time funding mechanism. And then as we think about moving from T+1 to 2U0, this use case and applicability of stablecoins we think is only going to grow. And then thirdly is payments. And so customers around the world are holding crypto. This is not just seen as an investment product for many people now. This is seen as a store of value. So if you look here, for example, in Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, the percentage of holders, and if you look at the percentage of people that are in the working age holders would be significantly higher. How do you actually use this? And there's real value prop, for example, for doing this. So one of the things that we've built and working with different partners on, and we work with a number of PSPs, including Stripe, Shift4, and others, is how can you pay with crypto? And what is the value prop to the merchant? So you've already got a crypto-enabled or stablecoin-enabled audience. How do you bring the Web 2 experience to a Web 3 asset? And so by that we mean, for example, subscription. If you have a Spotify account, if you have a Netflix account, nobody wants to push that payment monthly for a couple of bucks. So how do you bring about recurring payments, for example, which you can now do actually on Ethereum through account abstraction. And so bringing these two worlds together, we think is really, really important, and actually something that has already been done. And the value prop here is that you are servicing a new market, faster settlements and cheaper settlements. But also, as well, if you think about the velocity of go-live in payments, we think this is a really, really interesting use case. So we use one example, which we think is really interesting, Starlink. Starlink is lighting up the world from a connectivity standpoint. But often, how do you actually get payments from these remote and parts of the world? A lot of these places are underserved. Crypto and stablecoins are a great mechanism for transfer in a very, very low friction way to be able to enable for example, in this use case, Starlink to actually get paid. So I gave some examples today, but we do truly believe that this is a very, very narrow example of the applicability of this. And again, bringing it back to being a pragmatic optimist about this space. Zero Hash services a range of customers from across a whole range of verticals, and I really did today focus on stablecoins. But if you were to ask me, what are the theses, what are the hypotheses that you're excited about? Ones that we're really excited about is crypto as a store of value. We've seen this with the launch of the ETF in less than 2 months. The crypto ETF has become half the size, it's probably even larger now, half the size of the gold ETF. Tokenization, the movement of value, for example, tokenized money market funds, tokenized stocks. There's a whole application here that we've not spoken about today. There's going to be many billion-dollar brands created that are crypto native. We all know, for example, Coinbase, there's many others, Animoca. There's a huge range of customers that are building with this new technology. There are going to be Web3 companies created as standalone business lines. And then fourthly is technology utility for brands and applications. This may have been called Web3 in the past. That's less in vogue now. But if you think about the ability to distribute loyalty mechanisms, we think this is really, really interesting. And one of the missing pieces here is, for example, the infrastructure around payments. This is one of the driving forces. We did a piece with Stripe where they spoke about this thesis about new merchants in this new world. So I'll leave with that. Thank you very much for the time.